You know, and I'm an atheist agnostic. That's how. So I was skeptical.
What does that even mean, Power Game?
Ahoy there, YouTube! I'm back again today for another game review, and today I'm very excited to check out The Exodus of Israel from Anna and Brandon Butcher. This is for 2 to 4 players, ages 5+. It'll take about 15 to 30 minutes to play. In The Exodus of Israel, you are going to be going on the journey with Jesus and Moses as they make their way to Israel, parting seas and fighting Batman and doing all sorts of things like that. It is a story-driven game where you're going to be rolling and moving along the board and figuring out the story of how they made it to Israel. But is it good? Let's open it up and I'll tell you. Alrighty then, we're going to take a look at what you're going to get inside of The Exodus of Israel. Before we get started, I do want to mention this is a Game Crafter game, so you're going to notice that there's like stickered die that you have to assemble yourself and pretty generic pieces and pawns. That's just the nature of the beast with the Game Crafter, and currently that is the only way to purchase the game right now. So in Exodus of Israel, you and Moses and I think Jesus are going to be taking the journey going from Egypt to Israel, and you're going to be rolling and moving and going to various different spots trying to gain victory points, and also learning about the story of how they got from Egypt to Israel. So we'll go over the components, and we'll get a little bit into the gameplay. So first and foremost, we got a handy dandy rule booklet, 8 pages, double-sided, full of pictures, illustrations, examples, and it is an incredibly well done rule booklet. I'll be up and running in no time at all. It's also a very simple game, so I can teach it to you right now, but big thumbs up on the rule booklet. So Exodus of Israel, component-wise, each player is going to get one of their dudes. They're the disciples, the followers of Moses and Jesus as they go on their journey. You're going to be trying to get victory points, which will be kept track of right here with just some standard cubes. You're going to be gaining victory points by landing on various different spots on the board. Now, some of these spots, it might be a little bit hard to see, have little symbols on them. That means that you will either lose points if it's a snake, which is generally when you're doing, when you're in a bad part of the story, or gain stuff, like you might gain victory points. So whenever you see this little symbol right here, that means you're going to gain victory points if you land on it on the board, and you just keep track of it by moving it on there. So snakes and the altars, which are these guys right here, are on the board. Now the altar, when you gain these, you can use them at any point on your turn when you land on a spot that will give you victory points, and this will double it. So for instance, if you land on a spot that has 2 of this symbol right here, and you decide to play your altar, you will gain 4 points right there instead of 2. So those are very useful as well. How do you get around the board? Well, quite simple. You are going to be rolling and moving. And there's going to be 2 6-sided dice that will have various different symbols on them. The most prevalent symbol you're going to see are going to be the clouds and the fire right there. And whenever you roll a cloud or a fire, you're going to be moving at least a little bit. If you roll 2 of a kind of something, then you are going to be able to move ahead 2 spaces. So 2 clouds or 2 fires is going to move you ahead 2 spaces. If you get a cloud and any other symbol, or a fire and any other symbol, you'll move ahead 1 space. And if you get a cloud and a fire together, you're going to be moving ahead 4 spaces, which will really have you moving through the story. Now, also on the dice, there are going to be altars, which we talked a little bit about earlier. There's the point modifiers, the doublers, which if you roll 2 altars, then you will gain an altar. You will have snakes, which you probably guessed. If you roll 2 snakes, that's bad, and you are going to be losing 1 victory point. And then you also have the little coin things, which if you roll 2 of them, you will gain 1 victory point. So those are all the different dice outcome that you could potentially have, and luckily they also have them all right here. You're probably going to need this open when you first start the game, but probably about halfway through you're just going to know exactly what each one does. So we're going to run you through a little mock hand of the game so you can see exactly how it works. So purple will go first. They'll roll the dice, and they got a cloud and anything else. This one is an altar, which means they go ahead 1 spot, and they start the story. So the Israelites depart. Moses and Aaron are with them, and about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. So as you can see, each spot you land on, you're going to be reading it out loud because it will continue the story. So green, let's see what they get. Whoa, nice. They have blue and red, which means they're going to be jumping ahead 4 spaces. They go 1, 2, 3, 4. They are at the Red Sea. Israel crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. Pharaoh's army perishes in the returning waters. Uh-oh, I don't know who Pharaoh is. So I actually skipped a couple stories, but luckily I do know who it is because I played this a little bit earlier, and I just read everything. So As you can see, there's a little bit of a weird way that you're going to be moving, which is all traversed by these little black arrows right here, which kind of like Chutes and Ladders, if you remember that game, where the arrows will point you which way you're going. But more importantly, when I land on the Red Sea, I have gained an altar, and I have also gained 3 victory points. So green would go up 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3. And they would also have an altar, which is very helpful. So now purple's going to go. They have gotten a red and a coin, so they will go ahead 1 spot to Egypt. Edge of the wilderness. God laid Israel in a pillar of cloud by day, fire by night. And they don't gain anything there. Now, you're saying, can you share spots? Well, you cannot share spots, but how this works is you get to choice to what you get to do. So let's just pretend that green loses their turn, they don't roll anything useful, and then purple goes again, and they get 2 of a kind, which lets them move forward 2 spots. So they would go 1, 2, and they now have the option to either themselves bump forward 1 space or bump their opponent ahead 1 space. Now, obviously, the space ahead is a snake, so most likely they don't want to do it. So they would push green into the desert of Shur, where the Israelites wandered 3 days without finding water, and the green guy would lose a victory point, even though it's not actually his turn, and the red guy would gain the 3 points and the altar. But anywho, you're going to continue going around the board, following the story, reading the story out loud, until you eventually get to Israel. The first person to get to Israel is going to end the game. And how it works is they are going to get 4 bonus points. So let's just say green gets 4 bonus points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the other players can potentially lose points depending on how far back they are. So if you're in this green spotlight here, you don't lose any points at all. You're pretty close to finishing. However, if you're in the blue spot, you're going to lose 2 points. If you're in the next color, you're going to lose 4 points. If you're in the next color, you're going to lose 6 points. So the further you are back, the more points you are going to lose. You'll tally up who has the most victory points, and that will be the winner of the Exodus of Israel. And that, in a nutshell, is how the game is played. Alrighty then, the Exodus of Israel from Anna and Brandon Butcher. What are my final thoughts? Let's go over the pros, let's go over the cons. First, before we get started, I do want to mention one thing. I'm not a religious person, as you can probably tell from the beginning and the middle part of this. And I was very worried and skeptical this was going to be some Christian propaganda like a lot of the movies and some of the games are, where it's just, hooray Jesus, you should do this, this is how you should live your life. This is not that at all. I want to reassure you that if you were skeptical and worried about that, it is not that kind of game whatsoever. This is more of a story-driven game, just telling you the story that I'm assuming is in the Bible. So that is something that I did want to mention. But let's get to the pros, let's get to the cons. First, on the con side, graphic design-wise is not the best. The board is a little bit annoying how they did it with the arrows, because the arrows kind of blend in really darkly with the font, and you're like, wait, I think I'm going that way. It's just a little bit annoying. It could have been easily fixed, but it is something that I did want to mention. The graphic design-wise, with how the arrows work on the board on where you're going, is a slight bit annoying. Also, this is a Game Crafter game, which means it's not going to have the nicest components. It's not going to have components that you're used to. It's not a huge deal. It's actually one of the nicer Game Crafter games that I think I've ever gotten, so I did want to mention that. And also, they're nice enough to include extra stickers. So, if your stickers fall off your dice, you will have extra stickers, which is a great thing. Con-wise, you know, this is a roll and move game. There is very little strategy at all in this game. The only strategy in this game is, okay, do I bump myself forward or do I bump them forward when you land on the same space as someone? And also when you choose to use your altars. That is the only strategy whatsoever in this game. So it's going to be a turn off to some people, but it's ages 5+, so you can't expect too deep of strategy. Roll and move game, going to be a turn off to some people. Religious theme is going to be a big turn off to some people. You know, there's some people who just think this is nonsense fiction dribble, and why should you even have to learn it? I am most of the time in that same boat, but I actually found the story to be really interesting because I didn't know the story, and it's kind of an interesting story. So, but that is something I did want to mention. Religious theme, very simple, children's game. Oh, that's another thing. It says ages 5+. This isn't one of those games that you could just sit down a 5-year-old with another 5-year-old and say, hey, you guys can just play this by yourself, unless they can read very well, because there is a lot of text in this game if you want to get the story. And moving on to the pros, you will want to get the story because the story really does come across in how the board is laid out. And I liked that. I like the fact that this is more of a story-driven game. It's more about the journey than it is the destination, aka the victory points in this game, because you're going to be reading each spot and you're going to be just, kind of imagining the bad stuff and the good stuff that these people are going through as they're wandering through the deserts and having to, do all sorts of various different things. And I liked that aspect. I liked the story-driven aspect of that, and I can't think of any other children's games that are really like this, and I feel like this is kind of a market that should be out there, especially if you're trying to teach young children stories. Like, I would love to see, like a Shakespeare version of this, or a Harry Potter version of this, or something like that, where as they progress through the story, as they play the game, they're going to be progressing through the story. It's a really neat concept that I actually really dug. Also, I liked the artwork, what little artwork is on there. The rule booklet is outstanding, as I mentioned. I can't poke any holes pretty much at all in the rule booklet, which is always a good thing. Oh, another con I forgot to mention, there are turns where you won't do anything at all. If you roll certain dice combinations, like a coin and a snake, you don't do anything. That's a little bit lame, but it's not a deal breaker because the turns go by very, very quickly. So, overall, the Exodus of Israel, I am pleasantly surprised to say that I'm recommending this game if you want a simple children's game where you can hear an interesting story, or if you are a religious person and you want your children to have a religious-themed game and they're younger, this is not a bad one at all. Simple mechanisms, but an interesting story saves this one. That is the Exodus of Israel, one that I, surprisingly, can recommend. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to click on the subscribe button down below in the comments below. Let me know religion. Do you dig it or not? For me personally, no, I'm not a big fan. I've just never seen the appeal of it. I don't want to sit there for an hour or 2 hours every week having to pray and do all that sort of thing. And also, I don't know. I just don't like when things are pushed on me. And religion has always seemed to be something that is just pushed onto people. I'm not talking about Christianity or Catholicism or any religion in particular. I just mean all the religions. Anything that's worth killing for, generally in my book, is not the best thing. But religions, do you dig them? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.